Fundamentals of Photography by Abhijit Kumar Misra. Hi dear friends. My name is Abhijit Kumar Misra. In this video, I will discuss the essences of good photography. Photography is a beautiful art of taking picture with right equipment from right place at a right time. Not just right equipment help you altogether to take a good picture, you should also have a good knowledge of how to operate that equipment. The equipment is more precisely called a DSLR camera with various lenses. A camera is always remains an integral part of our lives. With times, it has changed a lot in shape, size, and design. Earlier, when we didn't have cameras, we had painters who draw pictures on the canvas. They were great artists who drew pictures of king with his queen, family portraits, and pictures of garden, monuments and lawns. Picture of Mona Lisa, drawn by the famous artist, Leonardo da Vinci, is a classic epitome. Then we had film cameras to take pictures. We bought films from studios and put it inside camera and took pictures. When the film was completed, we rolled back it and carefully removed it from camera, without exposing it to light, and send it back to studio. In studio they washed those films, to print out photographs and negatives. Negatives were used for later prints. Today, its place is taken by digital camera and we don't have to wait long to see the photographs we took with digital camera. If you simply want a camera to capture day-to-day activities, without much concern about picture quality, then a phone camera can serve your purpose. If you are a little concerned about image quality or you are a newspaper photojournalist, then I would recommend a good digital camera. Digital cameras are available in different shape and size with simple to advanced features, according to the prices. Nikon Coolpix P900 is a pro digital camera with 83x optical zoom. But if you are really passionate about photography and ready to pay some money for better quality in the images, then go for a DSLR. An entry-level DSLR is best for beginners who want to learn photography and not just a hobbyist. I don't recommend anyone to buy an advanced high-end DSLR camera unless they are very professional. Professional DSLR cameras are very costly and required other accessories. Those cameras are used by filmmakers, wildlife photographers, and photojournalists who works for international magazines and TV channels. It is very difficult to take a very good picture without having a solid understanding of ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. ISO, shutter speed, and aperture are the three kings of photography, also known as exposure triangle. Other factors like camera sensor, image processor, and optical quality of a lens also play a very important roles in producing an awesome image. Besides these factors and kings of photography, there are other key elements too, which are equally very important for achieving a perfectly good picture. In this video I will discuss all the important elements in details and help you understand the core idea behind a good photography. Number 1. ISO. ISO is the level of sensitivity of your camera to available light. It is typically measured in numbers, a lower number representing lower sensitivity to the available light, while higher numbers represent more sensitivity. As the ISO increases, so does the grain or noise in the images. For example, ISO of 100, 200, 400, 800, 1600 etc. ISO ranges are varies from ISO 100 to 1600 or ISO 80 to 64,000 for different cameras. Canon EOS 5D Mark IV has ISO ranges from 100 to 32,000. This camera comes around in rupees 2 lakhs. We use higher ISO to compensate poor lighting condition, especially during night, and lower ISO during bright daylight. In the above image we can see that at lower ISO image is clearer and at higher ISO image add noise and grain. Number 2. Shutter speed. Shutter speed is the length of time a shutter is open to expose light into the camera sensor. Shutter speed are typically measured in fractions of a second, when they are under a second. Slow shutter speed allow more light into the camera sensor, and thus used for low light, or night photography. Whereas, fast shutter speeds help to freeze motion. Fast shutter speed is set to capture fast-moving subject. Example of shutter speeds are 1/15. That is 1/15 of a second, 1/30th of a second, 1/60th, etc. From the given figure, it is clear that we capture any fast-moving object at a high shutter speed. You can create beautiful photo effect with very low shutter speed, for instance, falling water of a waterfall or moving vehicles at night. You might have seen beautiful pictures of light trails in highways, which is actually become possible at a very slow shutter speed. Number 3. Aperture. Aperture refer to the hole, within the lens, through which light travel into the camera sensor. The larger the hole, the more light passes into the camera sensor, and vice versa. Aperture also control the depth of field, which is the portion of a scene that appears to be sharp. If the aperture is very small, the depth of field is large, while if the aperture is large, the depth of field is small. In photography, aperture is typically expressed in f numbers, also known as focal ratio, since the f number is the ratio of the diameter of the lens aperture to the length of the lens. For example, f numbers are f/1.4, f/2.0, f/2.8, f/4.0, f/5.6, f/8.0, etc. In the two given pictures, first picture represent the different sizes of holes, which is called aperture, and, as already said, it is measured in f numbers. And the second picture showing the different sizes of sensor. Different camera have different sensor size. Full frame sensor size only find in advanced professional DSLR cameras. Number 4. Sensor. Sensor is the eye of the camera. Camera sensor receive the light passes through the aperture, when shutter is open at a determined speed. A camera image sensor consists of millions of light-sensitive spots called photosites which are used to record information about what is seen through the lens. It is the size of the sensor that a camera has which ultimately determine how much light it uses to create an image. Thus, it stands to the reason that a bigger sensor can gain more information than a smaller one and produce better image. Bigger sensor size also mean bigger and bulkier camera. Bigger sensors can also be better for isolating a subject in focus while having the rest of the image in background is blurred. Camera with smaller sensors struggle to do this because they need to be moved further away from a subject, or use a wider angle, and much faster, lens, to take the same photo. In this diagram, different size of sensor is shown with the help of different colors. Orange color represent full frame sensor size, which is 36 mm by 24 mm. Camera comes with full frame sensor size are much bigger and bulkier, compared to other cameras. Entry-level DSLR camera has APS-C sensor, and the size of sensor of Nikon camera, is little bigger than that of Canon. The smallest sensor is marked with dark blue in color, which is commonly found in mobile phone cameras. Mobile phone camera sensor are very small, and it has to be, because today's slim mobile phone doesn't have much space for an average sized sensor to be fit in. 1 by 3.2 size of sensor of most mobile phone camera with 3.2 to 8 megapixel resolution is very common and took very decent photograph. But, some very expensive smartphone like Samsung Note 7 has very good 16 megapixel camera. Image quality is largely depends on size of the sensor. It is the camera sensor that focus the subject and isolate it from background, and you get a nice blurred background. Entry-level digital camera with 16 megapixel image resolution and laser focus mostly has 2 by 3 mm sensor size and priced under Rs 8,000 depending on other features like optical zoom, image stabilization and inbuilt features like photo effects etc. iPhone 7 has 8 megapixel camera with 2 by 3 mm sensor size and record full HD video at 1080p. Anyway, it is widely believed that higher megapixel gives better picture, but it is not completely true. Image quality is mostly depends on the size of the sensor, and not the amount of megapixels. Megapixel is mostly deals with image size. It is not completely wrong to say that higher megapixel preserve more details, but there is a limit to it. A very big poster print require very high megapixel image for clearer view from a distance, but same picture when you viewed on your computer screen, then you need a lower megapixel depending on the size of your computer screen. It'll be more clear when we discuss about megapixel. I hope this diagram gives you a rough idea of sensor and sensor sizes. Replicating a full-frame 28mm f by 2.8 shot on a mobile phone sized 1 by 3 inch sensor would take a 4mm f by 0.4 lens. Most of the entry-level DSLR camera doesn't have full-frame sized sensor. So an APS-C DSLR has a crop factor of 1.5 multiplied by 1.6x, meaning that it crops into the full-frame image, using a 28mm lens on an APS-C, giving a view similar to a 45mm lens on full frame. Number 5. Megapixel. A digital image is made up of thousands of tiny little tile-like picture element, which are known as pixel. A megapixel is equal to 1 million pixels. Therefore, the image resolution increases with more numbers of pixels. Resolution relates to print size and the amount of details an image has, when viewed on a computer monitor at cent%. In the given picture, the first column shows typical sensor in megapixel, with respective resolutions in the second column. The last 3 columns shows respective print size and print quality. At 300 dpi image quality is excellent, at 200 dpi image quality is average, and at 150 dpi image quality is inferior. This is a calculated outcome of print quality at different sizes. Number 6. Exposure. In photography, exposure is the amount of light, per unit, reaching a photographic film, or electronic image sensor, as determined by shutter speed, lens aperture, and scene luminance. Exposure is measured in lux seconds and can be computed from exposure value and scene luminance in a specified region. It is generally a single shutter cycle. For example, a long exposure refers to a single, protracted shutter cycle to capture enough low sensitivity light, whereas a multiple exposure involves a series of relatively brief shutter cycle, effectively layering a series of photographs in one image. In the given picture, the same photo was captured under different exposure settings. A photograph may be described as overexposed when it has a loss of highlight detail, that is, when important bright parts of an image are washed out or effectively all white, known as blown out highlights or clipped whites. A photograph may be described as underexposed when it has a loss of shadow detail, that is, when important dark areas are muddy or indistinguishable from black, known as blocked up shadows, or sometimes crushed shadows, crushed blacks, or clipped blacks, especially in video. The following picture of an artificial Eiffel Tower is shot at different ISO level. The details of tower at ISO 200 is indistinguishable, and at ISO 1600 it is overexposed. At ISO 800 the image look better. A photograph's exposure determines how light, or dark, an image will appear when it's been captured by your camera. Believe it or not, this is determined by just 3 camera settings: aperture, ISO, and shutter speed, the exposure triangle. Mastering their use is an essential part of developing an intuition for photography. Now that you have a good knowledge of all the different aspects of photography, I believe that you can take much better photo by adjusting different settings in your camera, keeping in mind the exposure triangle. Look at the picture carefully. In the picture it is clearly shown how each settings affect exposure and eventually the photograph. Aperture controls the area over which light can enter your camera, shutter speed controls the duration of the exposure, and ISO controls the sensitivity of your camera's sensor to a given amount of light. One can therefore use many combinations of the said three settings to achieve the same exposure. The key, however, is knowing which trade-offs to make, since each setting also influences other image properties. For example, aperture affects depth of field, shutter speed affects motion blur, and ISO speed affects image noise. Now you have a very good idea on photography. You know the key elements of photography and how these key elements are so important to take a good photograph. Now that you have understood the terminology of all the key elements, you have also grasped the idea of how to combine these key elements of photography to achieve the perfect shot. I do hope that you have gotten a brief idea of different settings to be adjusted for different conditions. Now you know the most important elements of photography. Your photography skill will also improve with practice and experiments. I have just shown you the right direction to practice. Rest is all upon you. This video gives you brief introduction to the world of photography. There are many things to learn about and most of them can be gained with your own trial and error. I have shown you the path. I am very sure, if you have watched the entire video thoroughly and understand everything I depicted here, then you can go for advanced lessons like raw image capturing and post-editing, applying different Adobe Lightroom effects and editing in Adobe Photoshop and After Effects. You can also take different photos and manipulate them with one another to create something amazing. Photography is all about ideas and creativity. It is limitless. I hope you liked my video. Subscribe Galaxy of Star. Share this video with your friends. If you like this video then please give a thumbs up. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.